Hi guys, Trevor Swenson, Through the Darkness, PTSD, Trauma and Stressor Disorder. One of the things that I said I was going to do throughout my series was to talk about some of the things, the healing tips that helped me in my walk with trauma and stressor disorder. And today I wanted to talk about boundaries and what I figured out for myself, the importance of boundaries and how it affected my healing process. Trauma and stressor disorder, PTSD, in and of itself is difficult enough to deal with without all of the other stimulus and all of the other things that are going on in life. And one of the things that I found that worked very well for me and still works very well for me is having very tall, very close boundaries. And by being very tall and very close, they were boundaries that I absolutely would not let most people cross. And some of those boundaries, for instance, would be talking openly to just anybody about my diagnosis or what I was going through. Talking to people in general was a boundary that I had set. Triggers, staying away from my triggers with all of my human capacity and removing those from my life as I processed and went through the therapy and the help and the medical intervention that needed to take place. But setting up really tall boundaries and then sticking to them. I'll give you an example. I'm not a social media guy. In fact, this YouTube channel has been quite the stretch for me, being an introvert at heart. But the last thing that I would do at the very, very fragile points that there are in trauma and stressor disorder and PTSD is to reach out onto social media to a group of people that I will guarantee you that they all do not have your best interest in mind. I talked earlier in an earlier episode about the circles of communication and how important that very tight inner circle of people that know exactly what you're going through, that are able to connect with you to the best of their ability as to how painful and how awful it is. There are points in the PTS journey where people outside of that just aggravate the process. And so it might be time to get off of social media and telling everybody your story and everything that you're going through, because your mind and your body are going to need rest and time to heal and to process from whatever it is that you are processing or have gone through. So setting very high, close boundaries, whatever it looks like for you and your trauma, figure out what those are. And for me, it was removing the things that were very, very triggering. And at one point, it even meant being away from family gatherings. I will tell you that I had to miss Christmas. All very, very safe people, but it was just too much, too many questions, and I wasn't in the position to be talking about it in a healthy, productive manner. And so my boundaries were sky high, they were thick, they were tall, they were set in place, and I functioned inside of those as I allowed my mind and body to heal. Now, what I found, that as I got better, as I started to improve, my boundaries were still there, but they began to be a little bit further out and a little bit shorter. And you will realize where those boundaries are as you start to heal. But the key is to not wander around with people and things and triggers and stimulus setting you off continually, trying to figure out where those boundaries are. Start close, start tall, make sure that those people that love you and care for you and have your best interest are within those boundaries, and that you're communicating openly with where you're at. And then you get to be in control of where those other boundaries are, when they happen, how tall they are, and what and where you are in your healing process. For me, for instance, there are still things that I cannot do, that I will not do, that I won't expose myself to, that are clear boundaries that I will not allow people to cross. A goofy one for me, I touched on it on an episode, is I don't talk on the phone anymore. Just so happens that phone calls are a very triggering thing for me for whatever reason, and people can leave a voicemail, and I'm very, very good at getting my thoughts across in text or an email, and that is just something that I had to do. Another thing, another boundary, is that stimulus, noise, lots of people, chaos, lack of order was also an unhealthy trigger for me. And so a close, tall boundary is that I just stayed away from that. I did not allow that into my life to the best of my ability. Now, does it mean that I will never be in those situations again? Absolutely not. But just where I'm at with my healing, I have to have those boundaries, and you have to be very specific with where your boundaries are and what your boundaries are. If your triggers are people, those people are going to be in a season of not being in your life, either temporarily or forever. It's the gift of goodbye. That absolutely may be one of the boundaries that you set if you're in a bad relationship or if you were traumatized in a relationship. The gift of goodbye is the gift that keeps on giving, and at some point is necessary for your healing to continue and to progress and for you to get better. And again, it will take time and thought on your part, but never set up boundaries that keep people that are loving on you, that understand what you're going through, that are compassionate and empathetic to what you're going through, that want to be able to help you in a meaningful way. And never ever shut out God from doing what He's able to do. Remember, God is a gentleman. And by God is a gentleman, I mean that He will be there all the time, regardless of whether or not you have accepted Him as part of your healing and recovery process. He's always right there beside you, but you need to ask for Him to be part of the process. He will wait until you ask, and I challenge you to ask Him and to keep Him inside those tall, very close boundaries as you begin your healing process. And look forward to that time as those boundaries start to go out and they start to become a lot lower and a lot more tolerable. It is a great sign that you are making really, really good progress. One other example, they may be things that at one time you very much enjoyed, but you're just not at the point to put yourself in that situation. I'm a very passionate outdoorsman, hunter, and I had to miss deer camp, which is one of the most joyful, wonderful things that happens in my family. And I just chose to set up a boundary because I wasn't where I needed to be in my healing process. I was at a bad spot. And the cool thing about those boundaries and the people that love you, who happen to be in that circle of people at deer camp, is they understood. Had that group of people been a different group of people, it would have been an even more painful situation for me to walk through. So include those people that love you in every step of your journey. Open up with therapists, open up with doctors, open up with counselors, and remember boundaries. You are in control. It is your trauma, it is your recovery, it is your healing. Take the power back and set up boundaries and be serious about the boundaries and allow the boundaries to allow you the quiet and the peace and the still and the order to start healing again. Set up boundaries, stick to it, and celebrate as those boundaries begin to be further out and much shorter and less intrusive in your process of PTSD healing and in your walk through trauma and stressor disorder. Forward this to anybody that you think might benefit from hearing. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm going to continue talking about PTSD and my journey and what has happened to me, how I've changed, how it's affected me. I just feel like my purpose now is turning around and giving a hand to those people where I once was, which was a very scary and dark place. Keep moving. Don't set up camp in the darkness. Put one foot in front of the other. I can't wait for your healing. I can't wait to hear about your healing and your progress. This is just a chapter. I can't wait to hear you. I can't wait to hear you. I can't wait to hear from you. I can't wait to be with you again. And until next time, I hope the sun shines in your face like it is for me today. Thanks for being with me.